So number 2, what else does our joyful thankfulness lead to? Well, church, here in God's word, you can see it. The emphasis here is actually on how it produces singing in us. Singing. We're technically proclaiming in verse 4, singing praises in verse 5, and even shouting and singing in verse 6. And now that's pretty important and significant, especially here, because for all of us in here, let's take note. This focus on singing is in Isaiah here, meaning it's not just something that's reserved for the Psalms. And I bring that up because, honestly, from my conversations with people, sometimes people dismiss a lot of the singing emphasis in the Bible, especially in the Psalms, but because they kind of start to think, well, it's in the Psalms, so yeah, that has to do with singing. But that's in the Old Testament. And so they kind of argue. But for me, it doesn't really matter if I personally sing or not, like here on Sundays. I just want to let you know that sort of thinking is not biblical, because the Psalms do show us that we should be people who sing. So do New Testament passages. But then even more than that, just think about it this morning. This here in Isaiah 12 is specifically a prophecy of how God's people, how Christians will respond in joy and thanks to the gospel. And in joy and thanks, what is something that we as Christians definitely do according to God's word here? We sing. We sing. We're even technically commanded to sing here. And quickly, that is just a part of why singing is something we do here on Sundays in our worship services, because we each really are commanded as Christians to sing in God's word here and elsewhere. And so we each should really sing as Christians. And now, to be really clear on that though, that does not mean that we need to sound good in our singing or be on pitch in our singing. God's word is very intentional that it never commands that. That'd be very different. But again, I hope you see, this is how God's people says they will respond, with singing, because of such a joyful thankfulness to the gospel.